They say that memory is the chest where we keep our entire life. Every smile, every trip, every hug, and every lesson learned stays there like an invisible treasure. But what happens when that chest begins to crack and the memories start to slip away and we can no longer hold on to them? I remember the case of a woman named Claire, a 76-year-old grandmother who had always been the life of family gatherings. She cooked like no one else, told stories from her youth with amazing clarity, and had a contagious laugh that lit up the table. One day, however, something changed. During her grandson's birthday dinner, she forgot that he was the star of the celebration. She looked at him and kept asking over and over, "Whose party is this?" At first, everyone took it as a joke, but over time it became a worrying sign that something deeper was going on. These kinds of situations are not simple slip-ups. They are signs that, if we overlook them, can transform the life of a person and of an entire family. Dementia does not appear from one day to the next. It shows up little by little, with small warnings that many confuse with normal aging. And that is where the danger lies, when we believe they are harmless forgetfulness, and we pay no attention until it is already too late. Detecting the first signs of dementia in time can make the difference between maintaining a dignified life with a certain level of independence or suddenly losing control of one's own existence. Recognizing them not only helps to receive an early diagnosis and appropriate treatment, but also to prepare the environment, the family, and the person affected to face the path with more clarity, understanding, and compassion. In this video, I'm going to share with you the 10 early signs of dementia that you must never ignore. We will also talk about what you can do to improve the symptoms, slow down its progress, and take better care of your brain and the brains of your loved ones. My goal is that, by the end, you will have clear tools to recognize what many prefer to keep quiet and, above all, to act in time. Before we start, I would like to get to know you a little better. Tell me in the comments how old you are and from which part of the world you are watching us. Because even if age and distance separate us, today we are united by something stronger, the desire to live with memory, dignity, and fullness. Forgetting is human. It has happened to all of us. We leave the house without the keys, we cannot remember where we left our glasses, or we walk into a room and suddenly do not know why we went there. These slip-ups are common. They are part of the rhythm of life, and they usually increase with stress or tiredness. However, there is an important difference between occasional forgetfulness and early signs of something more serious, such as dementia. With normal forgetfulness, memory usually returns shortly afterward. Maybe you take a few minutes to remember where you left your wallet, but when you mentally retrace your steps, you figure it out. With dementia, on the other hand, the memory does not come back easily. The object may be right in front of the person and they still do not recognize it, or the memory simply disappears as if it had never existed. One of the clearest signs appears when someone begins to forget everyday details that they used to handle naturally. It is not about failing to remember a minor detail, but about losing essential and repeated information. For example, forgetting the name of a grandchild, confusing a child with a sibling, or asking several times in the same conversation what day it is or who they are talking to. It is not a simple slip. It is a blank space that worries those who witness it. I remember the case of Mr. Michael, a 78-year-old man who had always been punctual and organized. For decades, he worked as an accountant, and even in retirement, he kept a meticulous calendar of medical appointments, payments, and family gatherings. One day, his daughter noticed he seemed confused. He had marked a doctor's visit in his planner, but when the time came, he seemed not to remember why he had to go out. She asked him, "Dad, are you ready for the appointment with the doctor?" Michael looked at her, puzzled, and answered, "What doctor? I do not have anything scheduled today." Those kinds of situations began to happen more and more often. Sometimes, in the middle of a conversation, Michael would ask the same thing several times, as if the answer had been erased from his memory immediately. At first, the family blamed it on tiredness or age, but they soon realized they were facing something more worrying. The crucial difference lies in the frequency and in the impact. When everyday forgetfulness happens over and over again, when it affects personal relationships or keeps someone from carrying out basic routines, it is a warning sign. It is not enough to say, "It is normal in old age." Dementia often begins this way, with small forgetfulness that go unnoticed until they become too obvious. Paying close attention to these changes is essential. It is not about panicking at every memory lapse, but about recognizing patterns. If an older person constantly forgets important appointments, recent conversations, or familiar names, you must not downplay it. That is the time to seek professional help, to consult a doctor, and to talk openly about it with the family. Everyday memory is the foundation of autonomy. When that foundation begins to crack, life becomes uncertain, and the person may feel lost in their own home. Detecting this sign in time can open the door to support strategies, treatments, and lifestyle changes that delay the progression of the disease and restore some peace of mind both to the person and to those around them. Sign number 2, difficulty planning or solving problems. When what is simple starts to seem impossible. One of the most worrying changes in the early stages of dementia appears when the person begins to have trouble planning simple activities or solving everyday problems. It is not about facing a complex challenge, such as learning a new language or using a modern technological device, but about tasks they used to carry out effortlessly and that now become an unexpected obstacle. Think of something as routine as handling the household finances. For years, paying bills or keeping track of expenses was part of daily life. However, when dementia begins to develop, the bills that once seemed simple stop making sense. A person may look at the water bill and not understand what to do with it, forget where to write down the payment, or even get confused and pay the same bill twice. These kinds of mistakes not only create stress but also financial risks that affect the entire family. The difficulty is not in the math itself, but in the ability to organize the steps in a process. Logical thinking, which allows us to put ideas in order and find solutions, is gradually affected. In this way, a recipe that used to turn out perfectly can become an impossible puzzle. The person reads the ingredients, but forgets the order of preparation or repeats one step several times while skipping another. The result is frustration, insecurity, and, in many cases, a feeling of shame that leads them to give up those activities. I remember the story of Rose, a 74-year-old woman who had always been proud to be the official administrator of her family. She was in charge of the shopping, the payments, organizing vacations. But one day, her son noticed she had forgotten to buy basic products even though she had a list in her hand. Another day, he found that she had paid the electricity bill twice but had left the gas bill unpaid. When he asked her what had happened, Rose shrugged and said, "I think I do not really understand these things anymore." Those difficulties are often confused at first with distraction or fatigue, but when problems in organizing tasks appear constantly, it is a warning sign. Dementia damages the brain's ability to connect the steps in a process, to anticipate consequences, and to adjust decisions. What used to be natural, such as cooking a complete meal, setting the table and serving it, now requires enormous effort and ends in mistakes or in giving up the activity. It is not just a matter of forgetting, but of losing the ability to plan and execute. It is as if the mental path that guided those tasks had been erased and the person were trapped in a maze with no exit. This symptom, although less obvious than forgetfulness, can be even more limiting because it affects the practical side of everyday life. Being alert to these signs allows you to act early. If you notice that a loved one is starting to have problems handling household bills, following simple instructions, or carrying out recipes they used to master, do not ignore it. It may be one of the first warning lights that the brain needs help. And the sooner it is recognized, the sooner steps can be taken to support, protect, and offer alternatives that restore confidence and safety. Sign number 3. Problems carrying out familiar tasks. When what you have always done starts to become strange. Familiar tasks are those small actions that sustain daily life and that for decades are performed almost automatically. Preparing breakfast, turning on the television, using the washing machine, or cooking a recipe learned by heart are examples of routines that are part of our identity and our independence. However, when dementia begins to appear, what is ordinary can become an unexpected challenge. At first, it often shows up as a passing confusion. The person stops in front of the microwave and does not remember which button to press, or stands staring at a pot without knowing whether they already put water in it. In many cases, the family interprets this as simple distraction, something normal in old age. But when these situations are repeated frequently and begin to affect basic tasks, we are facing an important sign that must not be ignored. A very clear example was experienced by Ernest, a 79-year-old man who had always been an early riser and loved to prepare his own breakfast. For him, turning on the coffee maker and frying a couple of eggs was a sacred ritual that marked the beginning of each day. One morning, his wife found him in the kitchen with the frying pan in his hand, but not knowing what to do with it. He had placed the eggs in the sink instead of on the plate and, confused, kept repeating softly, "I do not remember. I do not remember what came next." That scene, so simple and at the same time so painful, reflected something more than common forgetfulness. It was the inability to complete a process he had carried out thousands of times in his life. It was not that Ernest had forgotten to buy eggs or that he was distracted by some other concern. It was a mental block that left him without the ability to follow a routine learned decades ago. These kinds of problems not only cause frustration in the person, but also worry those around them. The family begins to wonder whether it is safe to leave them alone in the kitchen, whether they will remember to turn off the stove, or whether they will be able to handle other household tasks without putting themselves in danger. The sense of insecurity grows, and, in many cases, the person starts to depend more and more on others, which directly affects their self-esteem. The fundamental difference between a passing distraction and an early sign of dementia lies in the loss of sequence and logic. We can all make a mistake in a recipe or get distracted and leave food on the heat a little too long. But when the person does not know where to start, does not recognize the steps, or cannot connect basic actions, we are facing cognitive decline that goes beyond simple absent-mindedness. Recognizing this sign in time can prevent accidents and open the door to seeking medical help before the disease progresses further. Adapting routines, simplifying processes, and accompanying with patience are essential steps in facing this change. Because behind each difficulty in the kitchen, in the laundry room, or in any household task, there's a silent cry for help that deserves to be heard with attention and love. Sign number 4, confusion with time and space. When the world becomes a labyrinth. One of the most common signs in the early stages of dementia is confusion about time and space. It is not just about forgetting what day it is, something that can happen to any of us on vacation or in the middle of a quiet routine, but about constantly losing track of dates, seasons, and locations. The person may wake up and ask whether it is morning or night, or insist that it is summer when it is snowing outside. They may also forget what city they live in, or how they got to a place that should be familiar to them. This symptom can begin subtly. Maybe someone frequently confuses the day of the week or needs to look at the calendar several times to orient themselves. But little by little, the disorientation spreads and becomes a real obstacle for daily life. The clock stops being a clear reference, and memories of where they are or where they were going become blurred. Think of the case of Louis, an 80-year-old man who went out for a walk in his neighborhood every afternoon. It was a healthy habit he had maintained for decades. He knew the streets, the trees, and even the neighbors who usually greeted him. One day, however, something changed. He went out for his usual walk and after a few minutes did not know how to get back home. He walked in circles, feeling that the streets looked familiar, but he could not recognize them. Finally, a neighbor found him disoriented and walked him home. For Louis, it was a distressing episode. For his family, a sign they could not ignore. Confusion with time and space not only causes fear in the person who experiences it, but also greatly increases the risk of accidents and getting lost. A person who forgets where they are may cross a street without caution, get lost in a shopping mall, or leave home in the middle of the night thinking it is daytime. These episodes endanger both their safety and the peace of mind of their family. It is important to understand that this sign is not simply a consequence of age. Many older people maintain intact orientation in time and space. The difference appears when disorientation is constant, recurrent, and affects everyday life. When someone stops recognizing their own neighborhood, cannot place themselves on the calendar, or wakes up confused about where they are, we are facing cognitive decline that requires immediate medical attention. The memory of time and space is essential for feeling safe and connected to the world. Losing it little by little causes anxiety, frustration, and in some cases, behaviors of running away or aimless wandering. That is why being attentive to this sign can save lives and prevent risky situations. Detecting confusion early and accompanying with patience, clear routines, and professional support can make the difference between a life with relative stability and a scenario full of fear and dangers. Sign number 5, difficulty understanding images or spatial relationships. When the visual world starts to lose its meaning, dementia does not only affect memory, it can also alter the way we perceive and interpret what we see. An early sign, although often little known, is difficulty understanding images or orienting oneself in space. This means that everyday tasks that depend on sight and coordination become confusing or dangerous. Imagine a person trying to read the morning newspaper. Suddenly, the letters seem to dance, the lines are lost, and it becomes hard to follow the thread of the sentences. It is not a problem with the eyes themselves, because their glasses still correct nearsightedness or astigmatism, but a failure in the brain's ability to process visual information. The same thing happens when someone becomes disoriented while walking. They do not properly gauge distances, trip over furniture, or misjudge a step when going down. This symptom also becomes evident in activities such as driving. A person who always drove safely begins to have trouble calculating the distance to other cars, or confuses the green light with the red one. What used to be an automatic act becomes a source of insecurity and risk. An illustrative case is that of Carmen, a 75-year-old woman who loved painting. Her paintings were her pride, full of landscapes and vibrant colors. But one day, while trying to draw a simple coffee cup, she noticed she could not give it a coherent shape. She drew the handle in the wrong place, and the cup seemed tilted in an impossible way. The most worrying part was that she herself did not understand what was wrong. She only felt that something did not fit. That loss of spatial relation was one of the first warnings that her mind was changing. Difficulty understanding images and space also shows up in daily life. Setting the table can become a challenge. The knife ends up on the wrong side, the glass is placed too far away, the napkin seems to have no logical place. When getting dressed, the person may get confused and put clothes on backwards or combine garments in a way that makes no sense, not for lack of taste, but because the brain no longer organizes what it sees correctly. This early sign is often overlooked because it is confused with eye problems or with clumsiness due to age. But when the mistakes are constant and affect habitual tasks, it is time to pay attention. The eyes are not what is failing. The mind is no longer correctly interpreting the signals it receives. The risks are obvious: falls, traffic, accidents, bumps at home. That is why identifying this sign in time is vital. Adapting the environment, avoiding dangerous stairs, improving lighting, and reducing obstacles can prevent serious accidents. In addition, seeking medical guidance helps to understand whether the cause is dementia or some other neurological problem. Recognizing that the visual world is becoming confusing is not easy for the person who suffers from it. It can generate shame, frustration, and even isolation. But with patience, family support, and professional help, it is possible to reduce risks and maintain quality of life for longer. Sign number 6, problems with language and communication. When words start to slip away, language is the bridge that connects us to others. Through words, we express what we feel, share memories, and build relationships. When dementia begins to appear, that bridge weakens. One of the clearest signs is difficulty finding the right words, breaking off sentences halfway, or repeating the same thing over and over again. At first, it may seem like a minor oversight. The person falls silent because they cannot remember a common word, such as table or clock, and replaces it with something vague. That that thing, but over time, the pauses become more frequent, fluency disappears, and conversation turns into a puzzle that is hard to put together. Think of Julia, a 72-year-old woman who loved to chat with her friends. One day, while they were having coffee, she wanted to tell a story about her granddaughter. However, halfway through the story, she fell silent. She was searching for a simple word. School. She moved her hands, pointed in the air, but she could not say it. Finally, she repeated several times, "That place where children go. You know. Her friends helped her, but she was left frustrated, feeling that her voice no longer represented her. The difficulty with language is not limited to forgetting words. Sometimes the person loses the thread of what they are saying, stops and starts again without finishing. In other cases, they repeat the same phrase several times without realizing it. This not only complicates communication, it also affects self-esteem. The person who goes through it feels embarrassed, withdraws, and little by little, prefers to remain silent so as not to be exposed. The emotional impact is deep. When speaking becomes a constant struggle, the person may isolate themselves, lose interest in social gatherings, and disconnect from their surroundings. The family, for its part, must learn to listen with patience, not to correct harshly, and to give time for ideas to come out slowly. Because behind every pause, there is enormous effort to keep the bridge of words alive. Placing objects in unusual places. When the home becomes an enigma, we have all put an object in the wrong place at some point. Putting the keys in the coat pocket and forgetting them there, or leaving the remote control on the kitchen table. These are normal distractions, but in dementia, this behavior repeats itself frequently and reaches extremes that are bewildering. Imagine opening the freezer and finding the car keys next to the food, or looking for the mobile phone and finding it inside the cold, unused oven. These acts are not simple oversights. They reflect a disorder in the memory and logic of the brain. The person not only forgets where they left the object, but also loses the notion of what it is for and where it naturally belongs. An illustrative case is that of Teresa, 77 years old. Her daughter noticed that the cutlery was constantly disappearing. After searching the whole house, she found it inside a shoebox in the wardrobe. When she asked her why she had put it there, Teresa could not answer. For her, at that moment, it had seemed logical, although she no longer remembered the reason. These episodes often cause confusion and sometimes family arguments. Some think the person is being careless or irresponsible, when in reality it is a clear sign of cognitive decline. Placing objects in unusual places goes beyond clumsiness. It is a warning that the brain no longer organizes information as it used to. In addition, this behavior can have practical and risky consequences. Losing important documents, medicines, or money in strange places can complicate daily life and generate distrust at home. That is why it is essential to observe carefully and not minimize these events. Detecting this early sign makes it possible to adapt the home, simplify spaces, and help the person maintain clear routines. Because even if for them, hiding the keys in the freezer seems unimportant, in reality it is a silent cry that their mind no longer follows the same rules as before. Sign number 8. Decreased judgment or decision-making. When judgment begins to fade, the ability to make sound decisions is a pillar of adult life. We choose what clothes to wear according to the weather, how to spend our money, when to eat or rest. With dementia, this judgment is affected in an early and dangerous way. The person begins to act in ways that were not usual for them, putting their health, safety, and even their assets at risk. A clear example is falling for fraud or scams. People who have always been careful with money suddenly give out personal information over the phone or pay large sums for useless products. Natural mistrust disappears, and with it, the ability to protect themselves. Another frequent sign is the lack of common sense in everyday situations, going out in the middle of winter without a coat, refusing to drink water on extremely hot days, or wearing dirty clothes thinking they are clean. It is also seen in personal hygiene, forgetting to brush their teeth, taking only partial baths, or not changing clothes for several days. Let us remember the case of Anthony, an 81-year-old man who had always been careful and responsible. One day, his family discovered he had given money to a stranger who visited him at home, claiming to be a friend from the bank. Another day, He went out wearing sandals in the middle of January when the temperature barely rose above 5 degrees. When asked why, he calmly replied, "It is fine. I do not feel cold." These mistakes are not simple distractions. They reflect a loss of the ability to assess consequences and to apply common sense. Decreased judgment is one of the most serious signs because it exposes the person to physical, financial, and emotional risks. When this sign appears, the family must be especially attentive. Supervising important decisions, accompanying them when shopping, organizing how money is handled, and helping in choosing clothes or in personal hygiene become necessary tasks. It is not about control, but about protection. Because behind every wrong decision, there is a brain that no longer distinguishes clearly between what is safe and what is dangerous. Recognizing this sign in time allows you to prevent accidents, avoid financial losses, and provide the person with a safer environment. Although losing judgment is hard to accept, accompanying them with affection and patience can make the path less painful for everyone. Sign number 9. Social withdrawal and changes in relationships. When the fear of making mistakes turns off, the desire to share social life is one of the pillars of emotional health. Talking, laughing with friends, attending family gatherings, or taking part in community activities are gestures that give meaning to life. However, one of the early signs of dementia is social withdrawal. The person begins to move away little by little from what they used to enjoy, not because they have lost interest, but because they are afraid of making mistakes in front of others. Someone who is always talkative may become quiet at gatherings. The one who used to be the first on the dance floor now sits down, watching from afar. The root of this change is insecurity, forgetting names, repeating stories, losing the thread of the conversation. That fear of being exposed creates shame, and shame leads to isolation. This withdrawal has serious consequences. The lack of social contact accelerates cognitive decline and deepens the feeling of loneliness. The person retreats into their own world, reducing their interactions more and more, which limits opportunities for mental and emotional stimulation. The family often confuses this change with simple disinterest or bad temper, but it is important to recognize it as a warning sign. Bringing the loved one back means encouraging them patiently, suggesting activities they enjoy, and above all, offering a non-judgmental environment where they do not fear making mistakes. Sign number 10. Changes in mood and personality. When the essence of the person begins to change. One of the most painful aspects of dementia is seeing how the personality of someone we have known all our lives changes. A kind, calm person may become irritable, distrustful, or even aggressive. Someone who is always cheerful may fall into deep sadness or episodes of unexplained anxiety. These changes are not voluntary and are not the result of a bad character. They are a direct consequence of deterioration in areas of the brain that regulate emotions and behavior. What used to be a balanced reaction now becomes outbursts of anger, sudden tears, or unfounded suspicions. Let us remember Helen, a loving grandmother who adored spoiling her grandchildren. One day, for no apparent reason, she began accusing them of hiding her things. She became angry, raised her voice, and looked at them with distrust. Those who had known her all their lives knew that this behavior was not like her, that dementia was altering her way of feeling and relating. These changes cause great pain in the family, who often do not know how to react. The key is to understand that it is not the person who is changing by choice, but the disease that is distorting their way of expressing themselves. Empathy, patience, and professional support are essential to cope with this sign. How to improve symptoms and take care of the brain. Small steps that make a big difference. Although dementia does not have a definitive cure, there are strategies that help slow its progress and improve quality of life. Care begins with an early diagnosis, which allows access to medical treatments and personalized support plans. Diet plays a crucial role. Diets rich in fruits, vegetables, fish, nuts, and olive oil contribute to brain health. Regular physical exercise, even if it is just daily walks, stimulates circulation and keeps the mind active. Cognitive stimulation is also essential. Reading, writing, doing crosswords, listening to music, or learning something new keep the brain in motion. Clear routines help reduce confusion. Establishing set times for eating, sleeping, and doing activities provides a sense of safety. In addition, family support is fundamental. A loving, patient, and understanding environment can ease the person's frustration and give them confidence to continue taking part in daily life. An inspiring example is that of Emmanuel, diagnosed in an early stage. With his family's help, he began to go for daily walks, adopted a healthier diet, and took up his passion for painting again. Although his forgetfulness continued, his decline was slower, and he managed to maintain an active life for more years than expected. Throughout this journey, we have gone through the 10 early signs of dementia: everyday forgetfulness, difficulty planning, problems with familiar tasks, confusion with time and space, difficulty understanding images, problems with language, objects in unusual places, loss of judgment, social withdrawal, and changes in personality. Each of these signs on its own may seem small, but when they repeat and combine, they form a clear picture that must not be ignored. Detecting them in time can make the difference between getting lost in confusion or facing the future with more tools and support. Memory is a treasure. It is the story of who we are, of those we love, and of what we have lived. If you notice these signs in yourself or in someone close to you, do not ignore them. Seek help, act in time, and remember, it is never too late to improve quality of life. Before saying goodbye, I want to invite you to leave a comment. Tell me how old you are and from which part of the world you are joining us. Your experience can inspire others and help build a community of support and wisdom. And do not forget to subscribe, share this video with your family and friends, and stay tuned to our content. Because the best way to take care of memory is to share knowledge and to accompany one another along this path.